Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Wake Up Missoula. I'm your host, Scott Ramf, here to usher you into, March 7th. It is the weekend before the St. Patrick's Day weekend, so next Saturday, MCAT's going to be in the St. Patrick's Day Parade. We have a bunch of other things happening this weekend as well. We have no Saturday drop-in this Saturday because we're hosting a bunch of Scouts of America kids to come down from 1 to 5 on Saturday, so we're going to be enjoying that. But we're going to have a lot of show to talk about because it is the first Friday of the month, and I have a lot of art to show you guys. All right, let's dive right into your city council report, as it is one of the more notoriously short city council meetings. We spoke a little bit more about the legislature and how the state of Montana is going to affect Missoula. So Jessica Miller with the city of Missoula talking about no new bills, and everything is now up for discussion, debate, and tabling of those bills. So this is what she had to say about that.
This week, today and tomorrow, they are holding hearings, and then the rest of the week, it's pretty much marathon floor sessions where they just do second and third readings on everything to try to get it to the following chamber. After that, there will be a transmittal break, and they will resume again on Friday the 14th. So things are moving fast now, and I will have a more comprehensive report of where some of our major bills stand after transmittal.
Okay, so transmittal is roughly where they're going to be taking their quasi-spring break during the legislature. Essentially, levies, for you who don't know, are the most permanent structure of tax increases, while bonds tend to favor the temporary status. Levies can be removed at the pleasure of the governing body without a timeline in place, but some of those bills that they wanted to levy or add to the thing was the a 10-year mark, so there's an expiration date on levies. Levies are technically used by local municipalities to create like a permanent tax base to increase, wages for fire department, police department, and more. And levies tend to be a little bit more permanent, with the idea of being able to be repealed, like I said, by local governing bodies. Unlike bonds, which are pretty much like, oh, we're going to pay this X amount of money over the next 10, 15, 20 years. So Jessica also talks about the bill that former city council and Missoula Rep. Marilyn Marler has been pushing for years, and this is a little bit background on that.
House Bill 477. This one was a surprise, so I just wanted to feature it. This one would phase out use of styrofoam containers, single-use containers for restaurant use, and Representative Marler here in Missoula is the sponsor of that bill. That bill has, I believe this is the fourth session that bill has been brought forward, and this is the first time it's made it out of committee. I don't know if it'll get further than that, but I found that exciting and wanted to share.
Okay, and part of that also harkens back to the days of banning the use of single-use plastic in our city, which also prompted people in the legislature to basically draft a bill on banning. So essentially, town has doesn't have the ability per state law to ban certain substances in their town, hence that single-use plastic that Missoula tried to push a couple years ago. And HB 77, as you explained, was basically a statewide ban on the single-use polystyrene products. So basically your takeout boxes and containers. Here are some of the impacts on nature. Landfill, it takes up a lot of space in landfill, obviously. Air pollution is a dangerous air pollutant. Wildfire, it breaks down into microplastics that can harm marine and wildlife. That's wildlife, not wildfire, my bad. Drinking water, ceratine leaches out of polystyrene into water, potentially contaminating water. Much like those microplastics from polyester can also break down in the ocean and contaminate the food chain, hence the fish, whatever eats the fish, whatever eats that, and beyond. One of the biggest ones that could affect Jessica Miller's position is Senate Bill 254, which blocks government spending on lobbyists. So that essentially means that the city of Missoula cannot pay for lobbyists, and after this quote, I'll talk a little bit more about the role that they play.
Senate Bill 254 would prohibit cities from using any expenditures on lobbying, and I believe that includes the community benefit we get from Montana League of Cities and Towns as well. And so we are testifying on that one. I believe that hearing was this afternoon, or is this afternoon. It might not actually be done yet, but we are testifying on that one.
Okay, so that essentially, like, you know, the argument is like she's definitely arguing for her job security in this particular position. This is a question that comes to mind that every 2 years when we host our Montana legislature, where a couple reps or a couple city council members believe hiring our own lobbyists for the season is a waste of money, and Missoula has used this type of lobbying to funnel information and necessarily have boots on the ground as council remain in Missoula. So the city council have a lot of on their plate, making sure the lights are on, their other jobs, because, you know, city council isn't one of those full-time jobs that you know, the common misconception. But of course, at the end, they spoke about another bill, drag shows, in the form of HB 675, which prohibit those kinds of shows, including not limited to affecting pride parades. This has a lot to do with the ability for adults to sue these kind of performances if they feel as though they have traumatized their children. So this would allow for people to sue drag shows and direct or indirect harm to youth. Supporters of HB 675 asserted that all drag performances are sexual by nature, which opponents deny. They are, if anything, tongue-in-cheek kind of humor and much more like stand-up comedy, has a filter for youth. This is an expansion from the law that passed in 2023, which Montana was the first state to ban drag shows in public schools, library, and those kind of spaces. So if the city approves of the Pride Parade, this law could essentially give power to any Montana residents to take legal action against certain things that happen in Pride Parades. So that's the thing. So Mayor Andreas Davis spoke about the bill further and more about this and their reaction.
The title was something like hypersexualization of public events or something of that nature. And it really puts the city in a rock and a hard place, because if this bill was to pass and we were to uphold the bill, then we would be violating, potentially violating people's First Amendment rights for freedom of expression. If we didn't issue the permit. If we issued the permit, then obviously we'd be against the law with the state. So I was happy to speak against that. While at the Capitol, there was a union rally there to rally against the right to work bill, and that right to work bill was yet again voted down. So that was good to see. Several other conversations there just about local option tourist tax that is being worked on, and it was heard today, and I'm sorry, I don't know the status of that, but just taking a look at what some alternative options might be for property tax relief for our constituents.
All right. So yeah, there's definitely a lot happening on the legislature. Of course, the prime focus is essentially taxes, and the concept of drag shows and Pride Parade isn't something that as big, but the city of Missoula spoke out against those certain bans on what the wording was, says hypersexualization, not to mention the mayor was in Helena last week for various city-to-city events during the legislature, which rounds up our legislative update for Monday's meeting. So as we move on, we go into Committee of the Whole, which spoke about the National Museum of Forest History, National Museum of Forest Service history, mind you. This is a new museum, and we got some people to talk about it. Lisa Tate, Executive Director of the National Museum of Forest History, talks a little bit more about this.
People are often surprised to hear that. They think we're part of the Forest Service, but we're founded by a historian in 1988 because they felt that the agency was unable to or adequately preserve their history. So that's how we got started, and we have become so much more since then. We're a national organization. We have a national board of directors, and we have a location here in Missoula where we are building a world-renowned national museum, the National Conservation Legacy Center. And the National Conservation Legacy Center will be, as I mentioned, a world-class museum, and I don't say that lightly. It's been about 20 years in the making, and we have had a capital campaign ongoing to raise the funds, and of course with increased construction costs, those goalposts have been moved several times for us, but we have achieved our capital campaign, and we started construction late last year.
All right. So there's a lot moving forward. You know, I'll have a conceptual design for you guys in a bit, but they are located off of Broadway, just past the airport on the west end. This museum will have 50,000 items related to Forest Service history beyond fire watch towers and other management over the years. Not to mention the University of Montana turns out so many Forest Service and forestry majors every year, which this also tends to go hand in hand with fire history, smoke jumping, whenever you think about them. So it's a little bit of more nuance than people were to think about, especially since it's been such a big, huge thing in the state of Montana for over 50 years. Lisa talks about some of their goals for this museum and some of the education that they're going to be providing.
But the mission of our organization is to share the conservation story of America's conservation legacy. So we're not just about the Forest Service, we're about all public lands entities. And that's our goal. When we have people come into the center, we have an overarching message that shares with the public the complicated decisions that are involved in conservation and the fact that it is multiple partners that make conservation happen. It's no one agency.
All right, and so that was some of that, and as we go further down into the meeting, we are still a year off from opening, but they brought some rendered footage of the experience from an international design team of the National Conservation Legacy Center. So this is going to be the big building, their crowning jewel of everything to do with Forest Service history. So here is some of this with some of the rendering of the images with that. Here's Lisa again.
And we did also, you had asked about when it will open, so the target date for opening is spring of 2026. We had hoped for later this year, and we actually have a large reunion of Forest Service retirees that we're bringing to Missoula that happens about once every 3 years, and we are hosting it this year in September because we thought the building would be done. So we have about 600 people coming, but that's still okay because they're going to see the majority of construction completed, and they'll be excited to come to Missoula and help share in this.
And as you can see here, there's definitely a lot of different renderings. Large windows, wooden frames, very eclectic to forests with the wood and the inclusions, everything, different kinds of plants, ideas. Here's some of the office space that they're going to be providing. Just like wood on wood everywhere. Some cubicles there, an outpost to walk out into the fire watch tower, essentially from the building itself. So they technically already have their own version of a fire watch tower, but they're going to have it included with their overall museum. So that's what you guys can expect. They broke ground just not so long ago. So if you want to find out more information, go to forestservicemuseum.org. So I went through flash that up right here, National Museum of Forest Service History, Conservation Legacy Center, Final Push fundraiser to help support them and more, forestservicemuseum.org. All right, so that's about that, and I'm going to move over to some Public Works. So Public Works had a special meeting that they hosted for over 2 hours talking about reprioritizing some of the funding mechanisms put into place for basic development of roads, sidewalks, and more. However, I did grab a clip from the meeting that spoke about sidewalks as they introduced into developing streets. So without that, here is Jeremy Tate, various other members of Public Works as well.
So we often end up looking at these projects as you got to do the whole street. You got to do drainage, you got to do curb, you got to do the sidewalk. And then at that point, once you're into it that far, doing the sidewalk on the other side doesn't really add that much more cost. It becomes a very small part of the project to finish the whole thing. So it doesn't make sense to put it off for later. It's better just to get the whole thing done. I think one of the things we're looking at in code reform is whether, are there streets that we don't need a sidewalk on? Are there streets that can function well without sidewalks, or with a sidewalk on one side, or without curb and gutter? So we need to ask those questions about, do we need everything to be the same everywhere? Or are there some good economic choices we can make?
And for example, too, Eaton Street's a collector, right? And 7th Street is a local.
Parts of 7th Street are collector, but it functions mostly like a local street.
I think that falls into our priority matrix too, right? Like there's more cars on a collector, so yeah.
Yeah,
All right, and so that's the issue, is that they're talking about some of those feeder streets that are just adjacent to reserve, because a lot of times people who live in those kind of areas tend to use side streets as a way of transporting in and around. And Franklin to the Fort is one of those neighborhoods that the streets are pretty shallow. There's not much space for sidewalks without encroaching on the personal property, which has kind of been one of the big things about engineering Russell Street, essentially from 3rd Street to Mount. That whole area, they're trying to make it into 4 lanes total, and trying to figure out how to mix and match that. It's kind of like, double dipping to save money and determine whether sidewalks are feasible. And Jeremy Keene and Christian Jordan did go back and forth on those issues impacting these streets through the Franklin to the Fort neighborhoods, especially when it comes to Eaton Street, which is becoming a high traffic corridor as time goes on. Sidewalks are financed differently, which is one of the big issues here in Missoula. A lot of people are just not happy about having liens put on homes and having those special improvement districts, which aren't necessarily much of a thing anymore. The last SID that I can remember that the city even did was Hillview Way, and that was more of like a grandfathered in project. They had to deal with a lot of red tape to get through, especially a lawsuit from property owners up Hillview Way. But in lieu of that, they were able to determine a better deal to create the very comprehensive special improvement district that would create Hillview Way, the easier road to get to, especially when coming to and from those neighborhoods, and Chief Charlo School. Sidewalks are financed differently, and here is some more information about what they're trying to do and trying to figure out moving forward on what they're going to do about sidewalks.
Reduce the cap assessment, which is Sika's proposal, or we just don't do sidewalk assessments. And that doesn't mean we have to say we're never going to do them again. It just could mean the next couple of years we just want to pause that program and work with the funding that we have. And I think, considering what else we have on our plate right now, all the grant projects and everything that we have to do, we're not going to have a lot of capacity to do a bunch of sidewalk projects. We're going to probably limit it.
I think what we're trying to avoid is having staff work on these projects and then bringing it to council and saying, we don't like that.
I bet that's frustrating.
All right, so what they kind of mean by that is that they did propose a sidewalk easement off of Eaton Street further down the road, because they did get a grant for a previous portion of Eaton Street that was paid for, majority of it by a grant, but roughly $40,000 to $60,000 was put on liens for homes and people who had to pay directly. Missoula has a weird relationship with the sidewalks in general, as they are part of liens put on homes in lieu of tax-based programs to pay for them, such as special improvement districts. That means they can take out $5,000 to $10,000 per home, for example. This is an example, mind you. This isn't concrete. So, they have different pay levels and scales, and they were trying to redistribute and redetermine this amount of money. $5,000 seems to be like the most you pay for it, so it's not necessarily $10,000. So let's get that out of your mind. And of course, many of these could be avoided if the city came up with a bundle, added sidewalks to road improvements that are built by road districts, a tax already established to blanket Missoula road funds or grants. One of those things is that grants is yet another great mechanism, and Eaton Street is one of those areas that got a major grant for that portion of sidewalk last year, but those liens resulted in roughly $40,000. I don't know, the specific number could be like 43 or whatever, but the point is that there is still a matching to the grant, because grants aren't just freely given. Grants are necessarily required a match to essentially put your money where your mouth is and add stakes to the completion of the project. And that's pretty much wraps up what I have to say for my city council report. There's definitely a lot more to the presentation and just going over a lot of the things. And essentially this work session for the Public Works, this is a Public Works CIP work session. So this is an additional to the Public Works. So they talked a little bit more about this, and their presentation they talked about CIP prioritizing process, funding summary, and then of course the current year and the proposed for next year, which is why they're thinking about taking a pause on some of the sidewalk assessments, which takes money and staff resources to assess whether or not they want to put a sidewalk in. So they're looking into huge major projects in lieu of those major grants we're going to be getting for Missoula downtown, the East Missoula corridor, Higgins corridor, the hip strip reconstruction. There's just a whole bunch of things happening in and around Missoula that's going to be on the docket moving forward. And those of you who don't already know, just a little bit of background before I wrap up my city council section, is that one of the city goals is that with the nearly $100 million worth of grants that Missoula's been getting for the last 4 or 5 years, trying to propose these major changes to the Higgins corridor, is to make Higgins Road single lane with a middle lane for turning, and just kind of keep that going on the way, all the way from downtown Missoula up through Higgins all the way pretty much. So they're trying to reduce the amount of lanes for Higgins, not to mention Main and Front Street, which are considered double threats because they're 2 lanes go in one direction, and they're trying to improve that so they can go in both directions on both Main and Front Street, very much like how Broadway and Spruce, and not Spruce. Yes, is it Spruce? Yes, Spruce Street, sorry. I get those confused, Spruce and Spurgeon. So anyways, those are pretty much your city council report for you guys. Sorry to leave it on a somewhat confusing note as I am speaking from the hip right now. So we're gonna move on to an excerpt from St. Patrick's Day interview with Joel Baird. So Joel Baird brought in some folks both from Ireland and beyond to talk about the St. Patrick's Day parade and all their events happening next week. So without further ado, here is this. And when I come back, we're going to talk about some movies.
Yeah.
No, I think Scott will take the opportunity. We got a parade that MCAT recorded 2 years ago. This is the 2023 parade, and we can talk over it. I just thought I'd show people a little bit of the splendor and the glamour of this parade. And I'll just plug MCAT to say we'll have plenty of candy. And it's always worth people's while. So, dear viewer, if you want to have an experience like that, we're all inviting you to come to the St. Patrick's Day Parade, Saturday, March 15th at noon. It's absolutely free.
I would like to also thank the Ancient Order of Hibernians who helped to sponsor that. They're very good to us.
Yeah. And there's more. Now, are we going to put a time on the whiskey tasting at the Rhino Bar? Or let's just say it's in the afternoon.
Yes, and my experience would be as soon as, people go on to the carousel rides that happen at 1 o'clock at Dragon Hollow.
Oh, and they're free that
They're
day, right?
free from 1 to 3. I think people will also, who are, will meander from the parade over to the Rhino Bar for the whiskey tasting, I would imagine.
Yeah.
That's usually kind of how it goes.
So we've got 2 events in the afternoon, one free rides at the carousel, and the carousel is celebrating its 30-year anniversary of its existence. And the whiskey tasting can't be free at that Rhino Bar. It can't be free.
I believe a ticketed event.
And to support Friends of Irish Studies, people could also get tickets to the dinner at the Holiday Inn, right? That is that evening, around 6 or so, 6 to 9:30. You want to talk a little about that?
Sure. The venue for it is the Holiday Inn downtown by the park. And usually people will start, coming in around 6 o'clock. And because there are silent and live auctions, it takes a little bit of time because you have to get your paddle and that sort of thing. But it's a very fun event. Goes until about 9:30 at night, and then people line up to hand in their, if they have won an item. So it's very exciting. We usually have amazing dancers, pipers, musicians, probably the Shamrockers and people like that. Anya will be there, Luke. There will be all kinds of wonderful people, and usually we get people who'll come to Missoula specifically, even from other towns.
Like Butte, for instance?
Yeah. They'll come from the Bitterroot, they might come over from Helena, from wherever they're at. So if you feel like having a bit of a hoolie and having some real Irish American culture and good Irish food, join us that night. The tickets you can find by going to the website, friendsofirishstudies.com. They are $45 a piece.
Right.
I do know that. So we'd love to see you there. It's really, really great fun.
All right, anything to add? Because I bet we're going to hit our 10-minute mark. Okay, then I want to thank all of you for taking the time to talk about Friends of Irish Studies and these great events. And thank you, dear viewer, for taking the time to learn about these great events that are coming up. Yes, the highlight is Saturday, March 15th, the St. Patty's Day Parade, Downtown Missoula. It starts at noon. You're more than welcome to grab seats before that. It's going to be North Higgins, over the new bridge, and down into South Higgins. The other events, Friends of Irish Studies, you can support them by attending a wonderful dinner that night. Tickets are $45. Learn more about it at friendsofirishstudies.com. For MCAT, I'm Joel Baird. Thanks for watching.
All right, we are back. Let's talk about some movies that are coming out this week. And kicking things off, Bong Joon-ho is directing this next movie called Mickey 17. So if you're not familiar with the director, they did Parasite, they did Snowpiercer, they did a bunch of various Korean-based films. From the guy who made Snowpiercer and Parasite comes yet another middle finger to capitalism. I mean, a guy's story is about social commentary is crazy, how the government or big business is incompetent and will lead us to our doom. But, you know, in a very funny way. This sci-fi action comedy is a guy from Twilight puts his best Steve-O voice from Jackass in a lovable oaf looking for love while consistently being used, recycled, and cloned to be used again because who reads the terms and conditions anyways? Then we got another post-apocalyptic, or, you know, not a fascist society, but in the Lost Lands. Vin Diesel was too busy for this one, so they got another bald man with a shady past, forced to deliver someone to their end goal while facing off with sci-fi baddies and monsters alike. Enjoy Dave Bautista with the gal from those Resident Evil movies. Get to the place before more end of the world from a world that's already ended, with characters on a bed of skulls in that picture. Then we got Queen of the Ring. Hey, you like pro wrestling? Have you ever wondered who was the very first woman pro wrestler? Basically, that's what this movie is. You know, it's the idea is like, oh, it's the first this person to do it. Essentially, she has to think about her whole life before getting brain trauma and being a single mother, trying to make ends meet, and the rise to fame and power resulting in her legacy to inspire future wrestlers that no one has ever known or heard of. Knows a little bit too much about her, because they're in the world of that wrestling, but if you don't really know, like myself, it's like, I've never knew that. Of course, there always had to be a first, but you don't really hear too much about them. Then we got a kiddie movie, which also is a zombie movie. So it's Night of the Zoopocalypse. Have you ever taken a famous title and changed it to be a kid-friendly romp? This movie is roughly Night of the Living Dead, but with zoo animals. So tiny hippo, wolf, and mountain lion team up to take on an army of the dead, or maybe some space radiation that turns them into animals, into zombies that can be quickly cured at the end, because I doubt they're going to be destroying the brain of these wild, cute zoo animals who are also somewhat zombified for the sake of entertainment purposes, because this is a kids movie, mind you. All right, so those are the movies that are coming out this week, and up next we have a brand new Dubbin Stuff from the 1950 film, The Gunfighter.
Oh, the kids are watching. Better make this look cool. Oh, whoa, you're sitting backwards on a chair? That's really cool. You see, young whippersnapper, I'm just like you. Well, you're welcome to partake in some coffee. I'm pretty sure the beans have been there since 1872. But you strike me more as a Earl Grey kind of drinker. Yep, but not really. Well, all right then. Let's talk turkey. Oh, you mean the mayor? Well, no, it's more about the harassment. Well, we don't really take kindly to strangers around these parts, 'cause, you know, strange. Well, I'm not one to be too strange. Perhaps I probably should have introduced myself to the people. We have a saying around here. If you don't say howdy doody, you get treated like duty. No, but close. You seem awfully cool and collected. Well, when you come around here with a bunch of your men deputized and whatnot, I get a little bit shaken. I can see where you're intimidated. Well, there's kids watching. I don't want to cause a scene. Well, I'm not much for horseplay. You don't say. I'm actually just passing through town, if that's okay by you. Come on now, just let me drink and hang out and change clothes and use your facilities. I don't know about that. My prejudice is strong. The last stranger married my daughter. Well, as a father myself, I can attest.
All right, here's your cup. Don't ask for anything else, you hear?
I don't think that lady particularly likes you. That's just my niece. I raised her like my daughter. She didn't really respect me then. I doubt she does it now. I like your mustache, by the way. Looks really nice on you. Well, thank you kindly, sir. I appreciate those words. You know, she's been single for many years, and she has a female roommate. Well, you've given me a lot to think about. Do you think there might be more to their relationship? Listen, we live in this town with a certain stake of blissful ignorance, and you coming around here? That ain't cool. I'm a man of simple pleasures. Watch the sun rise, watch the sun set. Yep, I know it ain't easy being unwelcome in a town. Trust me, I was unwelcome in my last town. That's why I moved to a town that was more welcoming. I once made a crash joke at a concert, and everyone's like, what? Must have been some quite crash joke you made. Perhaps you can enlighten me some more about this particular circumstance in which you were kicked out of a whole town? Well, I come from the old school days of William Shakespeare. All men actors only. I want you to say it right now. Well, female actor went on stage. Never mind, I don't want to hear it anyways. Okay. Well, you're really missing out. Are you going to say it or not? Oh, I ain't afraid to say it. What are you, a yeller? Yeah, I got a joke for you. How many sheriffs and deputies does it take to do their job right? I don't need this. Come on, it's inappropriate. You'd love it.
All right, welcome back. Let's talk about some First Friday events that are happening this weekend. It is the first Friday of the month, which means Missoula hypes up the art scene in downtown Missoula area, and I have your guide for you guys this weekend and pretty much the whole month if you missed your First Friday. Kicking things off is the Florence Building. They're kicking things off this summer. This is a kind of coming out of retirement kind of thing as an art spot. So each month they enjoy an art walk of original works by local artists, wine and snacks taking place at the Florence Building lobby. The event is free and open to the public, and all these events usually are from 5 to 8 p.m. Much like that, the Clay Studio of Missoula has a specific exhibition happening this weekend. It is the community exhibition happening tonight starting at 5 p.m. The Clay Studio of Missoula exhibition is celebrating a celebration of clay and its many forms and a vibrant community of makers who shape them. This annual exhibition highlights the diverse talents of Clay Studio members, students, and resident artists, featuring an array of functional pottery alongside striking sculptural works that push the boundaries for form and texture. Visitors will experience the depth of ceramic artistry as artists explore the techniques ranging from wheel-thrown and hand-built forms of experimental glazing and fire methods. This exhibit will be on display from March 7th through the 22nd with an opening on tonight at 5 p.m. Mo Steele is going to be at the Bernice's Bakery starting at 5 p.m. tonight. Maureen Mo Steele is a Missoula native and lover of animals and the great outdoors. This is a reflective in her work, which is a combination of reality and whimsy, painting worlds in which live, dream, and imagine. She's inspired by the magical works of Arnold Lobel, Beatrix Potter, and Hayao Miyazaki. She also currently works in Missoula, Montana, spending her time hiking, drinking coffee, and hanging out with her two cats, Dory and Nemo, which are also inspirations. Her artist note is, "My art inspires by the stories and illustrations I grew up with, like stories from Frog and Toad, The Little Prince, and Velveteen Rabbit. My greatest hope is that art I create reminds everyone that the child in us doesn't have to grow up as long as we dare to give ourselves permission to dream." Then Dagny Walton is going to be at the Missoula Art Museum tonight from 5:30 to 6 p.m., where Walton will share insights into her captivating exhibition, The Land is Haunted. Enjoy an open reception from 5 to 8 p.m., featuring a no-host bar and live music by Tom Catmull, while exploring the newly open exhibit, Freeland by Jason Elliott Clark. Don't miss this opportunity to connect with the artist, experience her work, and celebrate contemporary art in the heart of downtown Missoula. Then we got A Million Cranes by Bonnie Tarsi. It is going to be at the Artist Shop by way of their 65-year weaving journey where art, craft, tradition, and spirit are all interwoven. Her website artist note says, Bonnie Tarsi is a textile designer specializing in one-kind and custom hand-woven textiles since 1960. From the time she began her weaving journey, she was drawn by a color symbolism in all ethnic textiles. Quote, I continue to be amazed by the fact that weavers of old attach special meanings to the placement of every thread. And, end quote, in search of a set of personal symbols, Bonnie developed several techniques to have become her trademark color horoscope weaving, woven wards, and turned Wolfkey, a twist on the traditional theme. So then we also got Blooming Bodies at a Confluence Center. They're going to be hosting art program. Torrance is thrilled to support Earth Within Girls and their second annual art fundraiser. Blooming Bodies is in a world where women embrace the rhythm and nature and where empowerment takes root in nature, connection to Earth Within Girls. Their second annual fundraiser, the immersive experience will allow attendees to intimately engage with the showcased art, celebrate in dance, and learn about Earth Within Girls. Lynn's Standards is going to be at the Wren Hotel. It's a collective work titled Backstory. What We Turn Our Backs On is a love note to the bravery it takes to be counterculture. This exhibition celebrates the act of turning away and in doing so highlighting the marvels towards turning to something new. Then we got George Gogus, Last Two. Gallery 709, the Montana Art and Framing, is proud to exhibit the last two paintings, Never Before Seen, by George Gogus from 2016. They're a culmination of his painting series. Two large acrylics on canvas will be silent auction March 7th through the 27th. The remaining signed prints from Judith Basin Encounters series will also be available for custom framing and discounts. Also, Antique Glacier Parks images by Tamar Jacob Heilman, 1882 from 1945, framed in vintage style oak. And this will open for refreshments starting at 5 p.m. Like everything else that's happening in the downtown Missoula area. If you are interested, you can go to missoulaevents.net, which also brings me to all your basic events that are happening this weekend, kicking off with admitted student event. The University of Montana is calling all Missoula area students who have been admitted to the University of Montana. And if you're making your college decision, it's important to be able to answer the question, do I see myself fitting in at the University of Montana? Join for the Admitted Students Day at the University of Montana to answer that question. Starting at 9 a.m. this morning, you'll have the opportunity to start building your community here at Explore all resources and opportunities available to you, experience campus life, and to get answers to all your questions so you can feel confident that the is a right fit for you. Family fun time at Missoula Gymnastics, as always, 10 a.m. This is indoor fun for kids. The weather's starting to get warmer outside. I've seen a lot more kids and whatever, just driving by some of the parks. A lot of people parking outside of them. Tiny Tales, 10:30 a.m. It's a great way for kids to get engaged with reading and activities here at the Missoula Public Library every Friday at 10:30. Preschool playgroup at Roots Acro Sports Center, 10:45, another indoor fun place for kids to stay warm and active. Butterfly release at the Missoula Butterfly House. Every couple weeks they release new butterflies into their butterfly sanctuary, and it is a great experience. Many of those butterflies that you have seen at one time are no longer there. Butterflies don't live that long. Lunch at the Missoula Senior Center at 11:30 a.m. every single day from Monday through Friday. Yarns and Watercolor at 12 noon every Friday on the 4th floor at noon at the Missoula Public Library. It is an ongoing series. People want to stitch, crochet, or they just want to do some basic watercolors. All Abilities Art Club, also at base, starting at 1 p.m. every Friday. Introduction to Pickleball at the Lifelong Learning Center. Lifelong Learning Center is a great introduction into many different avenues, which include pickleball, but also getting certification in many different classes, and also just learning something new along the way. They also have an open play pickleball at 3 p.m. Freak Gospel Records and Tape Sale events. The Freak Gospel Records and Tapes is at 210 North Higgins. Their new and used vinyl, cassette tapes, DVDs, VHS, and art ephemeral for sale starting tonight at 5 p.m. So it's part of their First Friday event. They didn't have any art. I usually don't highlight non-art stores particularly. If there's an art gallery, I'll talk about that, but in terms of the store, I don't usually leave that out. Trail Tales Storytelling. Good Works Place, they're doing Great Burn Conservation Alliance is at the Good Works Place, and Wildlife Montana is an evening for wild storytelling. They'll gather at Good Works Ventures in downtown Missoula to share their favorite adventure stories on public lands, including beloved landscapes like Great Burn. Mountain Line Recruiting Open Hours. Mountain Line, if you're ever interested in public transportation, Mountain Line is hosting an open house recruiting event on March 7th from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. in the main offices. This is 1221 Shakespeare Street. This is a great opportunity to stop in and see your facility, try out sitting in the driver's seat and ask any questions you might have. Please visit mountainline.com/careers to see their current openings to see if you can be a bus driver. They have great benefits, and not to mention it is under the purview of the federal transportation, so, watch out for the drug tests. Volume Room, first Friday, March Open Jam. This is, the Open Jams are back at the Volume Room. They have such a great time getting to know Missoula music scene with the Open Jams, and they love to share space and being a place for musicians to meet and create. There will be a fire pit in the parking lot and free beverages. So, karaoke at the Jack Saloon at 6 p.m. Hellgate Elementary Bingo Night is going to be Missoula's best after school, and this is the Hellgate Elementary Bingo Night. Offers free childcare for the first 40 participants. Bob Wire is going to be at Imagination Brewing Company, start at 7 p.m. Concert and dance party at the Zootown Arts Community Center started at 7 p.m. The current incident of the dog in the nighttime, this is MCT, this is a rated R play at the Missoula Community Theater. Someone has killed a neighbor's dog, Wellington, with a garden fork. 15-year-old Christopher John Francis Boone is determined to solve the case, but in doing so, he must face the challenges he's never faced and brave the world he has never braved. This is a Tony and Oliver Award-winning adaptation of Mark Haddon's highly acclaimed novel. This one is for the adults, remind you. So it's going to be playing this weekend and next at the Missoula Community Theater. And they also have some other things happening. Cranky Sam Public House is playing some bluegrass music featuring Night Bloom and Jasmine at 7:30 p.m. Kinetic Convergence Dance presents Muse is going to be at Westside Theater. This is going to have matinees and evening shows at Westside Theater starting at 7:30 p.m. The Importance of Being Earnest, they're doing some theater and dance at the University of Montana. So, those are yet another one of those Shakespeare plays, if you're interested in learning more about that. Some old traditional plays from way back when. Community night, Rodney Norman is going to be performing at Residence Inn Missoula. Lance Handyside, Ben Larson and Grown Ass Men is going to be playing bluegrass music at Monks starting at 8 p.m. Josh Farmer Band is going to wrap up your Friday night at Union Club at 9 p.m. playing various music. Saturday, markets and such at the Southgate Mall. If you're interested in having a little taste of the summer farmers market, the winter market is ongoing until the farmers market start kicking up as soon as the weather starts getting a little bit warmer, and this is from 9 to 1 p.m. Stained glass workshop at Lifelong Learning Center. This is sun catchers, so learn all about stained glass and more at the Lifelong Learning Center. Missoula Open Hours at Spectrum Discovery Center this is a great way for kids to engage with hands-on science exhibitions here at the Spectrum Discovery Center on the second floor of the Missoula Public Library. Line dancing at 10 a.m. on Saturday at the Missoula Senior Center. Makerspace walk-in hours every Saturday at 10 a.m. Making Cottonwood Salve, GW Marks Exploration Center get tickets, sorry. They're doing a Cottonwood shelves at GW Makes Exploration Center. They'll make salve together using pre-infused oils and craft their own cottonwood bud oil with freshly foraged buds. They'll also talk about the many powerful actions and applications of poplar, the tree, how they get about finding and harvesting with care and intention, and offer some tips from experience on how to create long-lasting municipal patent oil. So MBIA, Missoula County Fairgrounds, is doing a home/remodel expo. Over 50 home professionals in one place starting March 8th from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Sunday from noon to 4. This is a list to solve your home problems from roof and rugs. Kids sponsored by Home Resource. It's $2 admissions, 3 buildings of ideas and solutions for home improvement. So it is springtime, warmer weather out there. You're looking to have things installed, replaced, or anything. That is a great avenue for basically a one-stop shop for all those services. Winter story time at Travelers Rest State Park. Fred Cooper was a smoke jumper from 62 to 67 in the Washington and Oregon areas. After graduating from Oregon State University, he has a career in human resources with the U.S. Forest Service. He is a smoke jumper historical researcher and a board member of the National Smoker Jumpers Association. His book, Smoker Jumper Experiment, details the airplane parachute invention of 1935, trials and tribulations of the smoke jumpers experiment in 1939, and the biographies of the 16 men who made it successful. The book also includes extensive photos of the first smoke jumpers and their equipment. Seminar, they're also doing a seminar at the Karis Nursery and Landscape. They're talking about planting and caring for fruit trees. So if you want to grow a fruit tree, Karis Nursery is the place to do it and learn all about it. And as the continuation of your first Friday, Dagny Walton is going to be at Missoula Art Museum at 11 a.m. on Saturday to do a special workshop led by the artist who is featured at the Missoula Art Museum's current exhibit. So create Claiborne art with Katie Dix at Montana Natural History Center. Claiborne is a smooth kaolin clay panel, more durable than scratchboard, and that can render ultra clean, crispy details and lines. It is also permits control of tonal variations. So it's an art class happening at the Montana Natural History Center starting at noon tomorrow. Open Teen Studio at the Missoula Art Museum every Saturday at 12:30 noon. And then, as always, our Saturday drop-ins, this one is particularly canceled because we have a private group this weekend with the Scouts of America. As we jump ahead to your Saturday night, 10 Cent Mule is playing bluegrass at Imagination Brewing Company. Jaden Decker is going to be at the Jack Saloon playing some country. Pokey LaForge is going to be at the Top Hat at the Wilma. Solid State Karaoke is going to be at Westside Lanes. Dance into the Now is going to be Monks playing some DJ music. Blue Collar Band is going to be at Union Club. Chris Moon is going to be on the Badlander every Saturday at 10 p.m. Some DJ music along with that. And then on Sunday, if you're interested in joining any adult sports spring, summer, they're doing a registration at Currents Aquatic Center starting at 8 a.m. on Sunday. This is for the summer season, whether that's softball leagues, kickball, dodgeball, or various other things that the Parks and Rec do for adult sports, mind you. Jazz and Brunch at Finn and Porter. MBA, their home remodel expo day 2. And then there's Pain Savvy Walk and Talk, the Sleep Diet Pain Connection. They'll feature talks on science-informed strategies preventing and recovering from chronic pain following by an optional walk. This talk will talk about the sleep diet pain connection and the anti-inflammatory diet. So they'll teach you about all the things that you guys can eat and avoid to improve your inflammation and pain areas of your body. So Five Valley Accordion Club. This is at the Missoula Senior Center every Sunday at 1 p.m. They also have Grow Music at the Missoula Public Library. This is in concert. This is a fundraiser to help fund education for young musicians through private lessons and more. So get lit. Grow Music presents Spring Figure Skate Spectacular at Glacier Ice Rink starting at 2:15 on Sunday. We also City Life Gym has a drop-in basketball at 3 p.m. and drop-in volleyball at 5 p.m. every Sunday at the City Life Gym. Odd Pitch Pinball Tournament, 4 p.m. every Sunday at Odd Pitch Brewing Company. Junior with Riddy Arman, the matinee show at Free Cycles. There's going to be playing some folk music starting at 4 p.m. on a Sunday. Bluegrass at Imagination Brewing Company, hosted by 10 Cent Mule. Speed Dating at Montgomery Distillery at 5 p.m. on Sunday. And then Very Funny weekly comedy open mic at the VFW at 8 p.m. And then karaoke at the Sunrise Saloon at 8:30 p.m. to wrap up your weekend. So, yeah, there's a bunch of things happening this weekend. I have still a little bit amount of time. I might as well talk about some of the things that are happening. The Missoula Organization of Realtors determined that the vacancy rate is 2.8%, making the market very competitive as we enter this summer tourist season. This comes out more than recent for the Missoula Organization of Realtors, who claim the median cost of a one-bedroom apartment in Missoula climbed to $1,190 by the end of 2024, while a two-bedroom unit cost $1,490, and of course at the end of 2022 the average cost of a one bedroom was $800. So that's quite a $300 jump, while a two bedroom cost was roughly $1,000 flat for two bedrooms. I remember at the height of the pandemic in 2020, maybe in 2019, a lot of rent was $375 for a two bedroom living room kitchen area for $700 total. So it's kind of ridiculous to kind of see those things. And those were the quadplexes that they had in Missoula. And according to reports from the Missoula Current, a healthy vacancy rate in the rental market lies between 5 and 8%. It's increasingly difficult to navigate through rentals in Missoula, even though we have met the demand in 2023 with the 8% vacancy rate. Many people who were already here had to leave because they couldn't afford to live here, mind you. That's just my opinion, and kind of just talking to people. But also we saw that diminish to about 2.8% as 2024, as we see today. The county is assessing the 100-year floodplain in Missoula, which have directly impacted people's property, thus resulting in an increase in rentals by proxy. So that's one of the contributors to the higher rates. 2,100 people in Missoula are using voucher systems through Missoula Housing Authority and will have decreased over the next couple of years since the amount of vouchers diminish as their value increases to serve a smaller pool of people. So they have X amount of vouchers and X amount of money, and the vouchers are worth more than the money that they have as of right now, and therefore they can't even provide 2,100 vouchers and also the same amount of payment. So it's weird. But in 2020, the voucher system went from 75% success rate to about 50%. So 25% of those people, now half of them, are now not only struggling, but almost having it nearly impossible to use those voucher systems to get into housing. Because when you're trying to get a voucher, you're on a waiting list, and that's just kind of how it is. This also comes down to the supply, but from personal accounts, more properties are looking to keep short-term rentals, which also can be lumped in with Airbnbs. This is more of my personal accounts and just seeing something like that. And as someone who's born in Missoula, it isn't completely beyond the realm of possibility that many people leave Missoula for college and careers until they want to settle and move back to raise a family per the usual Missoulian experience. But those return rates have become harder and harder because of these high rates of costs. Some good news coming out of the state of Montana, however, the community solar panel project passed through SB 188, which aims to expand access to locally generated emissions-free power, which would decrease participants' utility bills, support an ever-growing but undeveloped industry, and improve the grid's resilience to extreme weather events. So this is an and, not an or, to alternative to powers. This consumer choice initiative would open the door for further localized development of solar panel projects, very much like how Missoula's largest solar array in the county jailhouse. This would also allow for people's own solar panels to contribute to the grid and allow for come up with a framework for pricing electricity generated. However, opponents, aka Northwest Energy, are not sure about the legal framework of the devil in the details of this proposal, which those happening in HB 811 aims to solarize public buildings like schools and libraries to include solar panels to offset energy costs. This item was tabled in committee. And speaking of libraries, seems like a couple of bills in legislature were all about censoring books based on sexually explicit materials, that also tackling the non-library services, which could include makerspace, notary, passport, and various other services. And the reason behind these two bills we're tackling homelessness by not only not solving the problem, but thinking that libraries are run like shelters and not typical libraries, that the bill would have returned to the good old days. But the bills, both sponsored by Senator Daniel Emmerich of Great Falls, would have put stricter rules around how the state's public library handles sexually explicit material and prohibit libraries from offering services not related to their core function. The Senate tabled these bills, and no one spoke on behalf of this bill because critics decried that the insinuation that libraries should strictly stick to books and information was unfounded. The one example, according to Great Falls Library Director Susie McIntyre, was when a retired nurse asked if the library could find a way to support families dealing with dementia. The library applied for a grant and began hosting educational workshops on Alzheimer's and monthly social spaces for people experiencing dementia and their caregivers. Many libraries testified against the bill, including Bozeman Public Library children's librarian Ellie Newell, who said that the law could have unintended consequences with its definitions. This is from Missoula Free Press. Quote, "The bill's fault lie is in the overly broad and incorrect description of public library materials of a sexual or graphic nature. Historically, such language has been used to include materials that discusses anatomy and physiology, puberty, consent, and sexual abuse. While these topics may cause discomfort in some people, my experience is that many Montana families need and value age-appropriate materials on these subjects from the public library. Libraries are public institutions which are protected by the Constitution, which involves First Amendment and freedom of speech and expression. However, these arguments for libraries to censor internet searches remains fair game, as porn in library computers is one of those areas that librarians defend reluctantly and has had ways to protect from exposure from long-term arguments of censorship and simply the freedom of information that libraries must provide. So regardless of morals, Frank Zappa said it the best, quote, "When you have a government that prefers a certain moral code derived from a certain religion, of that moral code turns into legislation to suit one's certain religious point of view, and if that code happens to be very, very right-wing, almost towards Attila the Hun," end quote. He was a well-known conservative who, like many people during the Reagan era, switched to libertarianism on the rise of Ronald A. Reagan's version of being a conservative. So, speaking of influence, let's see. Oh yeah, I mean, this week we also had, actually, no, I'm not gonna talk about it. Forget it. No. All right, we're gonna wrap up my show. What else do I have to talk about in terms of like MCAT related things? Make sure to watch my show on Mondays with Neil. So Neil is my coworker here at MCAT. We run the front desk here if you're interested in learning just about whatever. We talk about whatever every Monday at the Missoula Public Library on the radio, 101.5 MCAT Mondays, talking about MCAT events and more, but also just kind of going for it and just having some fun conversation along the way. It's every Monday on the radio at 101.5 FM. And yeah, KFGM, enjoy it. And for Wake Up Missoula, I'm Scott Ramp. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend and take care.